Welcome back to Student Hub Live Refreshers Orientation event. This session is called Study Like an Athlete, and I'm joined by Alex Twitchen and Nichola Kentzer from our Sports and Exercise Department here at the Open University. Nichola, you are a lecturer in sport and exercise coaching and also a registered sports psychologist. And Alex, you're a senior lecturer in sports coaching and practice, and you're also a UEFA football coach and a tutor and a mentor for the FA. So lots and lots of things going on here. Now, one of the things that many athletes need to do is be productive, manage their time and know when they're at their peak to perform. And a lot of the things that we try and do is, I guess, get to that point where we're race ready and perfect to perform. And many of our students will be trying to do similar things, getting the balance right just before they're submitting a TMA. So there's stuff here about time management and motivation and peak performance that we thought would be really great to show any student, irrespective of whether or not they feel remotely like an athlete or not. So Nichola, I wonder if we can start by thinking about productivity and time management and, you know, being steady around all of that, those concepts.
Yeah, so really what we're looking at in the session is how when athletes turn up to training or they have a competition, they have to be on the ball. They have to be able to perform at their best at that time. And it may be that they have jobs, they have family, but they have to suddenly switch into being that athlete at that moment. And so what we're saying is that students have exactly the same, in that they might have only scheduled an hour on a day to study. And how can they be most productive in that hour? Because when they sit down to study for that hour, they might be thinking about what they've got to cook for tea, their job of that day, but they need to be able to study in that hour like an athlete. So how can they be most productive at that time? And Alex and I have got some ideas as to how to be able to study like an athlete.
Brilliant. So what are they?
Well, it's about being self-aware. It's about understanding how to get into that mindset at that moment. Yeah. So in that hour that you've got to be most productive, what is it that you can do to switch on? And Alex and I were talking before we came in about the fact that he is a coach and myself as a sports psychologist. It might be that one of my athletes turns up to a session and their mind is all over the place. They're thinking, oh, crikey, you know, I've still got this to do, and they should be there with their coach getting ready to train. Yeah. And so one thing I use as a sports psychologist as a technique is that I say to them, okay, take your dad hat off, take your carer hat off if they're caring for a relative, put your athlete hat on. And so it's almost just getting into the mindset of study at that point. And Alex, you were saying that it's very similar for your coaching.
The team that I coach, they're 12, 13-year-olds. They're in an academy and we have a little bit of a pre-match routine. So when they come along to a game, as they're getting changed, they can have the music on, they can be chatting, talking, doing whatever 12, 13-year-old children do. And then as soon as the last player's changed, they've got the boots on, the music stops, and it's at that point that they become performers, they become footballers, and they're focused and engaged and thinking about the game. And then when the final whistle goes, they can go back to being 12, 13-year-old children again and doing whatever 12 or 13-year-old children do. But it's for that moment or that period of time when they're focused on, you know, the game, the performance. And it's a bit like studying, isn't it? There's a time when you need to be a student and nothing else in order that you can perform and produce your best work.
So there's two things really going on here. One is about this identity and this performance of an identity, whether that's a student or an athlete, this sort of getting psyched up into being and doing something. But there's something else very interesting that you're saying, Nichola, about working with things. And I guess it's this flexibility. We were talking a bit earlier about, you know, how sometimes you might need to reshift your priorities. I mean, today I was going to go out for a run. I've got a streaming cold. I can't go out for a run. I had to, and that was really hard for me. But I knew that if I want to do something at the end, I'm going to have to reshift my expectations. I can't just go and be a runner, for example, or be doing those things. And very often our students will think, well, I've got an assignment due. I'm going to sit and be a student and really struggle. How do you manage that interplay of performance of those identities and the self-care, this looking after yourself and balancing those expectations?
Yeah, and I think it's interesting what you're saying about, you know, you've got a TMA deadline coming up and you know that you've got to set aside a certain amount of time. But it might be that you look at the computer and you read the same paragraph three times and nothing goes in, and you know you're not being productive. And it's exactly the same for an athlete. You know, if they're not in the game, they're not going to get the best out of their body. And just as you're saying about feeling poorly and deciding not to go for the run, that's you being self-aware. And that's what we're talking about here, is that if you're aware that you need to take time out, or if you're aware that you have got to study but you've also got other things going on, it is about managing that. And that's where our analogy comes in, you know, and talking about filling a bucket and having stresses and things, because it is about knowing how you are as a person. Do you need to have a break? Do you need to study at that time? But being flexible is important. And I was just watching the session previously about communicating with tutors. I'm also an associate lecturer, and I have students say to me, oh, crumbs, you know, I'm really squeezing for time. I haven't got the headspace at this moment to be concentrating. And so they approach me to talk about flexible deadlines. And so it you know, it's important to communicate with others about that awareness as well.
Now, you've got a nice analogy here that you say, and I think this can be really helpful, because very often, you know, we think we've got to fit it all in. We can just grab the time, we can sleep for an hour less or something, and, you know, it can be hard to sort of prioritise and balance. Talk us through then how you encourage students to sort of conceptualise and view some of these tasks and things happening in life.
So,
should we get the bucket up?
Yes,
let's.
Okay, so here we have our bucket. And basically what the bucket represents is our capacity to deal with every day. And so Alex and I are going to give some examples of what you might fill your bucket with. And basically the concept then is about managing that bucket. And as a student or an athlete, if your bucket is full or overflowing, and we'll talk about that a little bit more in a moment, then you have less capacity to be productive, because you have got so many things going on that you can't sit, and you might zone out and read the same paragraph 3 times. So it's just about managing the bucket, basically.
Okay, so we've asked you at home what can contribute to filling your bucket. Those are word clouds, so you can put 1 to 3 things in there. If you can't think of other things, just put a full stop so your results will submit. And also, a bit later, what mechanisms do you have in place to unwind or release the contents of your bucket? And we'll talk through that. You might not have the answers to that yet. But let us know what some of the things you might put in, things that fill your life, that would go into your bucket are.
So do you want to start, Alex?
First. Okay, so this is an email. So it kind of like symbolises work-related admin and bureaucracy and all those kind of things that you have to kind of do, which come in and you have to manage and think about replies, and just can take up time and you know, the capacity that you have. So that's the first thing that's gone into the bucket for me.
Okay, so one thing that's going into mine is I also have a small holding. So I've just had my sheep scan, so I've got lambing coming up soon. I know this is a cow, but this is just to represent the fact that I have a farm. So I have stresses of the fact that I've got things going on outside. I was also a recent part-time student, and obviously I work as well. So just to fill my bucket is an animal.
Okay.
Next one. So I work for Portsmouth in their academy, as we said. Couple of nights a week plus a game at weekends, so it takes up a little bit of time. But as with any coach, there's always more to it than just literally the time that you're there with your players and your performers. So you're constantly thinking about what am I going to do for the next session, or whatever it might be. So it just, again, adds to the bucket. It's just another thing. Although it's enjoyable, it's adding to, you know, the stresses of everyday life. So it's going in the bucket.
Okay.
Okay, so I have a purse to represent finances. So I think, you know, anybody who is studying alongside other things, you know, it is something that is a financial burden. Mine goes in as well as not only for study fees, but also I'm in the process of renovating a house, so that goes in as part of my stress.
So I have a picture of children. So I have 2 teenage children, but I think it could probably symbolise family and relatives, you know, more generally. But they take time, and you know, there can be various stresses, and teenage children in particular want things and so on and so forth. So that's something else that you can put into your bucket and you kind of have to manage.
Absolutely, and I'll add to that because I have a 4-year-old little boy, so I also have to manage childcare. And then another one for me is travel into work. So I don't live a long way away, but it still adds time out of my day that I have to manage in my head. So this is to represent commuting. There you go.
Gosh,
Feeling
drained even thinking about all of this.
So what we're saying is that everybody's got lots of things that will go into their bucket, and then we're expected to suddenly, with all of those things, clear our minds and be productive as a student. And so it's having an awareness that we do have all of those things, and you know, we don't have to get rid of those things, but it's about learning to manage them to enable us to be productive and perform when we need to perform.
So let's see what people at home have said about what's in their buckets. So, family is the key thing here. Dogs, oh good, no cabbage cake, that's great. Skating, skating, skating. Someone's obsessed with skating. Interesting things, money, work, elderly parents, study, kids. So various responsibilities there being talked about, but family being one of the key ones, and I think that's very common for so many students.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know, the flexibility of the study here at the Open University means that you can study evenings and weekends, but ultimately you might feel guilt that, you know, you should be with your family, and so it's about managing that and knowing that, okay, I'm going to set aside this amount of time and be most productive at that time, therefore you're getting the most out of that study time.
Yeah.
And that's really important.
Okay, so you've got a bucket which is nearly full of stuff, and I'm guessing that some of those things might get more or less important depending, I guess, on how much control you have over them. If all of a sudden the renovation's not going according to plan, then that might become a lot bigger. What happens then, and how do you release this flow of everything that's in this bucket?
So the first thing that's really important is, I've said the phrase a number of times, but it's that self-awareness.
Yeah.
So as an individual, knowing when your bucket is filling, and you don't really want to get to the point where it is overflowing, because at that point you can't manage a number of different bits and pieces. So the concept is that you need to be aware of when it is filling. And if you can suddenly say, oh, okay, I know things are building, I know I've got this deadline coming up. If you can plan early enough, you can then start to prioritise, as you said earlier, and try and relieve some of the stresses that you've got in front of you to meet those deadlines. And so the concept of the bucket sort of changes slightly if we turn it round, and you can see that there is a tap. I don't know if you can see that clearly. Is that the best way of doing it? And so with the self-awareness, it's not just having a tap to release those things, but knowing when to turn the tap on.
Right.
And so that's really important. And so from an athlete point of view, it might be that they learn that. And that's something I might work with them as a sports psychologist, or Alex as a coach, or a parent, or whatever. But as adults, then that's something that we have developed, but you've just got to tune in and understand when that pressure is building.
It's that sense of feeling sort of overwhelmed, isn't it? And when you sense that you're getting to that point, you need to do something to relieve that kind of sense and that
So
tension.
what sorts of things might relieve some of this pressure? I mean, for each of you.
Shall I go first?
Go on.
I'm actually going to pull something out, and that's family. Because I think it can be a bit of a double-edged sword. You know, sometimes it can add to the stress, add to the pressure, but equally they can be very supportive, and so they can help to relieve the stress, relieve the pressure. So it can fill your bucket, but it can also be a way of releasing the tension, releasing the stress, and helping you.
Absolutely. And so I'm exactly the same. I've got my family here, and I don't see it as a stressor in the sense that it's something that I only see as a positive release, because, and I'll add this as my second thing, and I've got a calendar, because I have become very good at managing my time. And so that for me, we talked about time management, but that is twofold for me. It's managing your day in terms of a schedule and having to be flexible, as you say, in terms of you changed your running today. But also it's, and the reason I've got a year planner is months ahead. And again, I saw one of the presenters earlier talking about, as soon as you go onto your module website, get your TMA dates and circle it all the way through the year. So you know there's going to be a pinch point coming in May when an EMA is coming in. Or you know that, you know, other things are happening at that time. And so it is time management for me, helps relieve my stress.
HJ and Michelle, what do people at home say about managing stress? Because I guess just sort of reflecting on it, it's very different. But often, I know for myself, when I'm in a very heightened state of stress, sometimes I find it hard to remember some of the things that make me feel better. What do people at home feel?
Well, I think Victoria's first response is that she forgot about wood porosity when she was talking about glue application she forgot about when she was talking about wood porosity, and wanted to put her head under a pillow. So we suggested that probably wasn't the best stress technique. We'll be talking about ways that you can take a break and study in small chunks and things like that.
She's working very hard towards her TMA, which is due in a couple of days. But yeah, we were talking about how no matter what deadlines you got, sometimes just having a little break in between everything can give you that reboot you need to keep going. And we've had a nice chat as well about how we try and manage things at home. So you set some time aside, don't you, to try
I
and
absolutely do. I
organise yourself?
block out time. I like to study in big chunks, but I know that some people, or most people I speak to, like to study in small chunks. And we were also talking about the value of saying no. And in our house, we called it no-annuary. So in January, we had to say no. Guard your yes, we were saying. So it's no-annuary. But I think we need nobuary now, because
Yeah.
we need to continue to say no in our house.
And it's just about like planning what you take on and thinking, do I have enough time for this? Is it going to affect me? Is it going to reduce the quality of everything else I'm doing? So I think we've decided saying no and learning how to do that well is really important as well.
Yes, and when to say no and when to say yes. 'Cause sometimes actually it's good to say yes and have a distraction.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Okay, some brilliant things there. Well, let's see what you filled in at home for our word cloud then, about things that help you to relieve the stress from your bucket. Husband, beach cuddles, watch a good movie, playing piano, food, kids helping out, walking the dog, exercise, student hub, music, watching a good movie, beach. Lots of new things coming out. Netflix, food, taking a break, music coming up again, exercise is a big thing, yoga, that can be really good. Saying no. So lots of things coming through and populating. You've both got different ideas, but what are some of the things, Alex, commonly students can find helpful if maybe they don't know what might help them reprioritise and empty some of the stress from this bucket?
I think it's finding something that they enjoy, a leisure pursuit. So for me, I don't play any musical instruments, but I enjoy listening to music. Yeah. So I know if I'm writing, I'll get to a point where I feel, I need a break, and I'll go and listen to some music, just maybe for 10 minutes, 15 minutes. The other thing that I like to do is read. I'm not particularly big on reading fiction, but I'll always try and have a book which is nothing to do with sport, might be to do with culture or politics or economics, because it just sort of takes me away from a different space to what I'm working in, day out. And I just find that interesting. And again, another one which has come out from the people at home is going out and doing some exercise. Yeah. So I'll go for a run, I've got into body balance and body pump, and I'll go for a swim. And I think that's, not only is it important to look after your mental well-being and being aware of your mental state, but it's also looking after yourself physically. Yeah. That physical dimension to your well-being. Yeah. So, I don't compete, but I exercise because I enjoy it, and I like just getting out and the fresh air. Yeah,
and sometimes just going for a walk with the dog can be really
exactly
calming and soothing, and allow you time to reflect on what you've been studying.
Yeah, absolutely, and it's the timing of that as well. So I really liked the ideas that came up, but it's the timing of when you decide to do them. So I was saying earlier about the schedule in the day. Yeah. If you know you've got 2 hours set aside for study, plan in 15 minutes to go for a walk before you study, so you can sort of clear the day before you get on to do that study. So it's about knowing how to prioritise your study time and protect it by saying no, or or saying yes to a distraction beforehand.
Yeah, that's brilliant. Well, thank you so much. A lovely analogy, and I think one that really helps. And I think hopefully you at home have thought about some of the stuff that goes in there, and also more importantly, how to and when to release that tap to rebalance, I guess, everything that's going on. Thank you so much, both of you, for coming along tonight. Well, our next and final session is about building your confidence and growing your skills. So Peter Edwards going to join me after this break. We're going to give you another campus tour video, but this time show you some of the landing lights just outside the building we're in now, actually. So we'll see you in just a few minutes for that next session.